guess what? We're going to talk about war and economics. Seems like there's a few problems in both areas, except maybe they're related. Economic policy has a lot to do with going to war and fighting war, and wars have a lot to do with fear interfering with sound economic policy. So we do want to talk about that, and specifically talk about how some of this has affected not only all wars, but the one that's going on, because wars have to be paid for, and that's an economic issue, and there's always winners and losers, mostly losers, but the instigators are generally the winners, and I'm referring to the military-industrial complex. They do pretty well, and the people who have to pay are the victims of the inflation that's created, and also who have to fight the wars, and that, of course, are the poor people that don't have a powerful lobbying arm in Washington like the military-industrial complex goes. So it is a major problem, and the people are, of course, very concerned about it because it never seems to end, and we're in the middle of this terrible result of the NATO-type policy that we have in Ukraine. And there's a lot of projection of what's going to come of this. But anyway, it's a mess. People are, talking how far will the Russians go, or are they going to take over Kiev? Are they going to take over all of Europe? Are they going to take over all the world? And so there's a lot of speculation. The one thing, Chris, that we've mentioned already in trying to sort all this out is the refusal to recognize and talk about, some of the mistakes that NATO might have made. NATO, they sort of paint them as, the perfect arbitrators, but that is not the case if you look at it as we do it, everything going on. But it precipitates, it starts with problems, but they always expand. And we're talking about the consequence of wars, at least when they're foolishly started. But a lot of them are intended, but a lot of the consequences are unintended consequences of war. And I think that's what's going on now. But when I started making my list, Chris, I had a long list. So we probably can't go over all the consequences that we find related, to the war, and the false promises and policies that led up to the war. There's always a rehash as later people go over this and say, well, why do we do this? Why do we do that? They've already started it, but right now, the main thing in Washington is get more money, and make sure it's bipartisan. So Adam Schiff, who's chairman of the major committee dealing with the foreign policy, he says that we should, send some more money. So the person in charge of the funding of this, Coons, says, well, they're proposing and talking about $10 billion to help clean up the mess. They're already talking about how to help clean up the mess. But the chairman of the financial committee says, no, $10 billion won't do it. Because let me tell you how ridiculous this is. Because he says Friday morning that any supplemental funding bill would likely exceed $10 billion, the majority of which would go toward humanitarian aid to address the impending refugee crisis in Europe. I keep thinking, don't we have a refugee problem already in this country? Aren't we flat out broke? And who believes the government when they say, well, we're in this for humanitarian reasons? That's why we went to Iraq and Afghanistan, for humanitarian reasons. And the saying goes, as soon as somebody comes and talks about humanitarian efforts, you better run and hide, because they're after either your life or your money or both. And that's a consequence of war that seems to be universal. Basically, in the big picture that I see, I think there's a problem with the human race, because the wars have been going on for a long time, and it's been predicted that they're going to last a long time. But I think from the beginning of time, it's been recognized that there is a higher law, a law that really recognizes truth and honesty, war and separates the war and peace, and they can sort it out of what is right and wrong. And on the other side of that are the people who outrightly refuse to believe there is a higher law, and they become the militant dictators, and they're the ones who philosophically aren't bothered by the killing They're bothered only if they didn't get a lot of benefits from it. So that contest is going on, and I can see that in this operation. There are people, when I was in Congress and all those Middle Eastern wars going on, and a lot of suffering and dying, the remorse of the people who were gung-ho over that war, and especially the leadership in our country, there was no remorse about it. There was no guilt feeling. They had no sense of guilt that something was wrong. And I think that's the basic problem. And then all of a sudden, if you don't have a basic principle, if you don't have a higher law, you don't even know what you strive for. And the people who are on the other side say, why do it? There is no such thing as truth. Don't even look for it. So we can do whatever we want. And I guess the Federal Reserve sort of must fit into that category, although most people would say, what are you talking about? No, they don't care if people suffer, and they really don't have a conscience.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.